The word choice has all but been taken over by the pro-abortion crowd. That's not what I want to discuss here today. Recent history, both public and private, has displayed the fundamental function choice plays in a person's independence, liberty, and freedom. Yet, said history has shown that many of the American people have given up the ability to choose, placing that responsibility on others. By doing so, people have voluntarily abandoned their position as free citizens in order to become enslaved subjects to those who do the choosing for them. So I want to discuss this next on the Constitution Study.
Love your neighbors and have a few good friends. Every day we're everyday Americans. Oh, every day we're everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution, teach a rising generation to be free. Today's episode is going to be just a little bit different because I'm not diving into the Constitution or the law or a Supreme Court opinion, but into something more fundamental. John Jay said we should all read and study the Constitution so that we would know when our rights are being violated and be prepared to defend and assert them. Well, that's part of what I want to focus on today is how do you defend and assert your rights? And fundamentally, it starts with choosing. Now, there are some things I've chosen to do to help, keep the Constitution Study going. And I'm going to talk some more about them at the end of the program. But for now, let's get to this question of choice. If there is a fundamental core concept behind the idea of America, it is the belief in independence, liberty, and freedom. Think about it. Our nation was formed when we declared independence from Great Britain. Within the Declaration of Independence, we find the recognition of the unalienable right to liberty. And the Bill of Rights starts out with protecting our freedom of religion, speech, and press. These ideas and the laws that protect them are the fundamental basis of our nation. Yet there's one key aspect of this triad that we seem to seldom think of, because all three are dependent on the ability to choose. Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines choose as to select freely and after consideration, to decide on especially by vote. When our nation was founded, our ability to select freely how we live our lives and to decide who will represent us was not only a fundamental part of the character of this nation, it was unique in the world. Throughout our almost 250-year history, this power of choice was not only the envy of many of the world's population, but drew them to our shores with the hope that their children would be able to choose for themselves. While not always smooth, our ability to choose not only shaped our lives, but the lives of billions across this planet. As often as I hear people complain about their choices being taken away from them, more often than not, it has been we the people who have given up our right to choose rather than others taking it away. Now, every choice has consequences. Even choosing not to decide has consequences. In the long run, our choices come down to a consequences we are willing to endure. Take, for example, our own War of Independence. Independence is defined as a state of being not dependent, complete exemption from control or the power of others, a state in which a person does not rely on others for sustenance, ability to support oneself, a state of mind in which a person acts without bias or influence from others, exemption from undue influence, self-direction. For decades, the King and Parliament of Great Britain chose to enact laws and taxes upon the colonies, many of which violated the rights of those colonists. During that time, the colonies chose to push back either by request or by disobeying the laws and edicts. This, of course, led to conflicts between the colonies and Great Britain. On April 19, 1775, the consequences of those decisions blew up. Picture April 19, 1775, Lexington, Massachusetts. Imagine you're a member of the Massachusetts militia. Having heard the warnings about the British marching for your neighbors in Concord to confiscate their ammunition, You respond with your fellow militiamen and gather on Lexington Green. Shortly after dawn, you see a column of British soldiers marching your way. As their commander orders them to halt, you stand there, nervous but steadfast. This is your land, your home, and you will defend it. The British commander orders you and your fellow militiamen to lay down your arms and go home. You have a choice. Yes, you had joined the militia, giving your word to follow the orders of your commander, Captain John Parker. The British Army had law enforcement powers, so their commands to disarm and go home had legal authority. You probably didn't realize it, but what you and your fellow militiamen did in the next few moments would change the world forever. As you stand there, you have a choice. Do you stand with the militia or obey the legal authority? The choice is yours, and you will suffer the consequences. Your commanding officer makes a choice and issues orders. Stand your ground. He chooses to disobey the legal authority, recognizing the violation of the colonists' rights. He orders his troops to do so as well. They will not lay down their arms. They will not go home. Don't fire unless fired upon. He chose not to escalate the situation. He will not order his men to fire. Neither will he expect them to stand defenseless if attacked. But if they mean to have war, let it begin here. There's your choice. Do you stand against the legal authority or obey it? Do you hold your fire, waiting for your opponents to fire first? Should they attack, do you stand and fight, or do you flee? Captain Parker made his choice. Independence was more important than life and limb. If the British wanted war, he was willing to give it to them. However, you still have a choice. Obey your commanding officer or the legal authority. What do? History tells us that someone fired. Who was it? We're not sure. The battle that followed effectively started the War for Independence, or as we call it today, the Revolutionary War. In those times it was called the War for Independence, but in many ways it was the war to remain independent. The Massachusetts militia at Lexington Green had looked at what the legal government was doing and knew it was wrong. They considered, to whatever extent possible, the consequences of their decisions and chose independence over servitude. To this day, we live with the consequences of those actions, both good and ill. Now, Webster's dictionary defines liberty as freedom from restraint, in a general sense, and applicable to the body or to the will or mind. The body is at liberty when not confined. The will or mind is at liberty when not checked or controlled. A man enjoys liberty when no physical force operates to restrain his actions or volitions. Liberty, in its most general sense, is the ability to choose without outside influence. This is a state which cannot fully exist in the real world. There will always be people who wish to control you, how you live, what you can and cannot do, and what you will allow to confine you if you do not comply. Either they will be stronger than you and thereby enforce their will on you, or you will be stronger than them, thereby enforcing your will on them. Which is why when most people talk about liberty, they're talking about civil liberty. Natural liberty consists in the power of acting as one thinks fit without any restraint or control except from the laws of nature. Civil liberty is the liberty of men in a state of society or natural liberty so far only abridged and restrained as is necessary and expedient for the safety and interests of the society, state, or nation. Civil liberty is the ability to live your life as you choose, restrained only by the laws of nature or of civil laws necessary for the safety and interest of society. I like to summarize the laws of nature into one simple statement. We don't hurt people and we don't take their stuff. Civil laws that protect the public as a whole, such as speed limit and traffic light laws, do not infringe on your civil liberty because they are necessary for the safety of society. On the other hand, helmet and seatbelt laws do infringe on your civil liberty, since they are designed to protect the individual, not the society as a whole. Even here, we still have the ability to choose. Many people choose, if not to ignore, at least bend speed limit and traffic light laws. In many cases, when they are caught, people recognize their breach of civil law and accept the consequences. Others act as if they have a right to violate these laws, frequently because many have done so without getting caught. I feel little sympathy for these people, since they chose to break the law and are merely suffering the consequences. Again, Webster's dictionary defines freedom as a state of exemption from the power or control of another. Liberty, exemption from slavery, servitude, or confinement. As you can see, freedom and liberty are closely related. For our discussion here, I want to focus on the exemption from slavery, servitude, and confinement. Many think that slaves have no choices. In reality, they have very few choices, and the consequences of them are extreme. After all, the consequences of failing to escape slavery can not only be severe, but lethal. Servants, on the other hand, may have a few more choices, but the consequences are generally far less severe. In rare circumstances, is losing one's job likely to lead to an end of their life. And even those in confinement have choices. They can obey the guards or not, or they can try to escape or not. In those circumstances, the consequences of their choices have varying punishments. In all of these situations, people have choices. This nation was founded on our ability to choose and the independence to govern ourselves rather than be governed by others. The liberty to live our lives as we see fit and without undue external influence. The ability to live as free citizens rather than subjects of government. During my lifetime, I've observed a disturbing trend, one that seems to have accelerated exponentially over the past decade or so. That of the American people giving up their right to choose for themselves. Instead, they choose to follow others without consideration. When did the image of a strong and independent American become something to be vilified? When did we decide that conformity was preferable to uniqueness? When did we decide that our ability to choose for ourselves must be subjugated to the will of others? When did the American people decide to give up being citizens and decide to be subjects? According to Webster's dictionary, a citizen is defined as the native of a city or an inhabitant who enjoys the freedom and privileges of the city in which he resides. American citizens are those who enjoy the freedoms and privileges of this nation. Over the decades, Americans have given up many of those freedoms in an attempt to get along with others. We gave up our freedom of speech, first to the politically correct, who then took over our governments and human resource departments. Then we gave up our privacy to tech giants who vacuum up our data in exchange for the latest gadget in the claim of making our lives easier. We gave up our freedom of the press to social media, who in turn encouraged us to give up our freedom of thought. Let us not forget that we also gave up our civil liberties to government agencies that do not legally exist. Lastly, it appears we have given up even our right to decide by vote. First, by handing over our right to choose to political parties, then by allowing those who corrupt the process to continue without punishment. Just as Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of stew, the American people have sold their birthright as citizens to become subjects of others. See, a subject is defined as being under the power and dominion of another. Just look at the reaction to the mask and vaccine mandates. Few Americans recognize that these acts were violations of the Constitution and therefore void. Even fewer were prepared to defend their rights in the face of government and corporate actors. Millions of Americans still live under the dominion of illegal government actors, not because of the law, but because of their own subjugation and their unwillingness to accept the consequences of defending their rights. I've met hundreds of people who truly believe they have no choice. They complied with the mandates because they didn't think they had a choice. They followed government edicts about their health, their homes, and even their speech because they do not think they have a choice. The truth is, they have a choice, but are afraid of the consequences. As a society, we have become so risk-averse that we will give up just about anything to be kept safe. And in doing so, we become subjects of government. Many will not prepare to defend themselves because we're told that that's what law enforcement is for. We won't prepare for natural disasters because that's what the Federal Emergency Management Agency is for. We won't investigate the drugs, supplements, and foods we eat because that's why we have a Food and Drug Administration. Many see these problems but don't stand up because they are afraid of being put on some list or of receiving a knock on the door. We have done what Benjamin Franklin warned us not to do, and we are suffering the consequences. Mr. Franklin said, "They who would give up essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty nor security." Look around you today. Do you have liberty? Or do government and societal actors claim the authority to tell you how to live your life? Do you have security? Or does law enforcement simply come to mop up the mess afterward? Contrary to popular belief, you do have a choice, and it's a legal one. The Constitution is the proof of the illegality of so much of what the federal and state governments are doing, the infringement on our rights and the usurpation of our powers. The question is, do you have the fortitude to do what is right in the face of evil, knowing there will be consequences? Most of us only know the first stanza of our national anthem, the last two lines of which ask an important question. "Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" Does that banner still wave over the land of the free? Not unless the American people are brave enough to choose rights over false promises of security, to look at the cost of standing up for freedom and to consider the cost worth the gain. As long as we value our comfort more than our rights, we will continue to be servants of those in government. When the 56 men in Philadelphia saw independence in their grasp, they were well aware of the costs. They would be labeled traitors and subject to death. Even though we won the war, some of those men died. Others suffered horribly in British custody, and others had financial ruin. They knew the likely cost of declaring independence, yet were still willing to pledge. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Only if the American people recognize that those who work in government serve us, not the other way around, and are willing to pay the price so that the following generations can live free, do I believe we will be brave enough to ensure that the land our children live in will be free. This episode came about, this story came about, because I kept hearing people telling me they had no choice. They had to do what government said because they were government. Even though the government was breaking the rules, it was breaking law, it was acting illegally, they said, but I have to because they said so. I'll never forget when corporations instituted vaccine and mask mandates, not because it was the law, that law would be unconstitutional. No, simply because Joe Biden in a press conference said he was going to pass an executive order, which has no legal authority over the people of the United States. But they quickly jumped to implementing these illegal mandates because he said he was going to. I don't think he ever actually did. It is an enslaved mind that leads us that way. It's the mind that's afraid of actually standing up and saying, no, we didn't authorize that. No, you don't have the legal authority to do that, and I can prove it. That takes courage. That takes bravery. America was the land of the free because it was the home of the brave. When we stopped being brave, when we were afraid to defend ourselves, to stand up for ourselves, to control our own government, we stopped being brave and we stopped being free. I'm not saying we're fully enslaved, but that's certainly the direction the United States is heading. We've put so much of our authority into government, into social media, into tech giants, into bureaucracies that have no legal authority, but we trust them. Even the media. How many people only know what's going on because some media talking head told them so? They never checked for themselves. They never checked to see if they're being lied to. They're not free. They're subjects. They're under the dominion of others. Now, I'm not saying being free is not without risk. It's scary. It's not fun standing on your front porch looking at an FBI agent telling him, sorry, I don't chit-chat with law enforcement. But it was the right thing to do. I know a lot of people would be terrified to be on the phone with a paralegal at a U.S. Attorney's office and say, no, I'll show up, but I'm not getting the shot. I'm not getting the test. I'm only going to wear a mask under duress, and I'm not going to be silent about it. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a twinge in my belly when I did that. But it was the right thing to do. To prepare to stand up and assert your rights, to defend your rights. Because if we won't defend our rights, if we expect others to defend our rights, then we're subject to them and their plans and their ideas and their concept of what those rights are and how they're to be enforced and protected. The number of people, the number of groups that are trying to take away your rights are pretty significant. There are some that are trying to protect your rights in different ways. For example, I've been on Rumble for, a couple of years now because, they promised to protect my rights. I don't entirely trust them, not because I think they're out to get me, but because I want to have a back door just in case they change. Sure, I'm still on YouTube, but all my content goes to Rumble first. Rumble is my first choice. I made a relationship with Patriot Mobile. First, I became a Patriot Mobile customer because I got tired of my cell phone provider funding things that are violations of people's rights. So I went to a provider that said, we don't do that. And after being with them for about a year and a half, I said, you know what? Can we partner? Can we help each other? Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. If you go to patriotmobile.com/constitution, you can find out more about it. Find a plan that fits you. Be sure to use the code Constitution at checkout because you'll get free activation. And yes, they support organizations that are trying to defend your rights, including the Constitution Study. Maybe you want to look at other people who've had their lives turned upside down because we wouldn't stand up to tyranny in our government. General Flynn has a movie coming out in April. Go to constitutionstudy.com/Flynn movie, FLYNNMOVIE, to find out more. You can also buy your tickets and pre-order your DVDs there. And if you want to learn more about the Constitution and how to prepare to defend your rights, don't simply be the one that stands up and says, this is my right because I say so. If you want to defend your rights, if you want to have proof of the rights you're trying to exercise, well, join us here at the Constitution Study. The Patriots program is all about that. It's all about learning what your rights are, learning the Constitution, learning how to defend and assert your rights. And in fact, I'll be starting up, looks like a Patriots-only Constitution study. There's a Constitution study on the website, or there will be shortly. But I'm doing one just for my Patriots so that we can be a little more involved, a little more engaged. Again, find out more at constitutionstudy.com/Patriots. You can find out about the Patriots program. Hey, take the boot camp. It's free, and you'll learn tools that'll help you defend your rights. The point is, if you're sitting around waiting for somebody else, some president, some Congress, some political party to defend your rights, you're already enslaved. Presidents can help. Congresses can help. I suppose political parties could help. But ultimately, if you want to be free, if you want to be independent, if you want to live at liberty, the buck stops with you. You must learn to live free. And that's what we're trying to do here, is teach you how to do that. So I hope you come back and join us next time for the Constitution Study.
Love your neighbors and have a few good friends.